Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Ithaca's Bane, bringing you all types of tabletop gaming. Now, Black Oath Entertainment and Alex T are well known for their role-playing products, including Broken Shores, which was featured on the channel recently, Rift Breakers, Disciples of Bone and Shadow, and Sacrifice. Speaking of Sacrifice, Alex has just made the basic version without all the bells and whistles. It's now available, pay what you want, on DriveThruRPG. So go and check that out. But it's not about the role-playing games this time. What we're looking at here is Warlord Ascendant. This is a new game from Black Oath, which brings many typical role-playing game mechanics, adds some skirmish miniatures game concepts, sprinkles a little campaign and exploring into the mix, and then throws them headfirst into the world of the Sacrifice RPG. Very dark, fantasy, medieval, very dark. This then brings us a game that could prove to be an ideal gateway for role players to dip their toes into this other amazing genre of tabletop gaming. I should point out that miniatures are not necessary to play the game. Neither is terrain. You can very easily use tokens or standees on printed map boards, such as these, and you are recommended to use the ones with the square grid, which a lot of role players use to represent encounters during role-playing games. Now, I will be using miniatures during the playthrough, but not physical terrain. Now, why would this be an ideal game for role players to start skirmish gaming? The game is heavily based on the Sacrifice RPG, and as such it shares many of the concepts and mechanics as this more detailed game, this more detailed role-playing game. You'll find that most skirmish games tend to have simpler rules when compared to RPGs, but in Warlord Ascendant, role players will see some familiar elements. Even if they're not aware or haven't played Sacrifice, it is a D20 sort of OSR style of game. So in Warlord Ascendant, all checks utilize a D20. Now, the game's core mechanic is the ability check, which, like I say, revolves around a D20. You roll the D20, you add the corresponding ability, and you compare it to a target number. Now, there are plans afoot to have some Sacrifice on the channel in the near future, but we are here to look at the skirmish game, Warlord Ascendant. So, in this game, you create and control a small warband looking to grow more powerful and extend your influence over as much of no man's land as possible. And this is also the area of the world that is the focus in Sacrifice. There are rules in Warlord Ascendant to actually bring your character from the RPG into the skirmish game as well. So that's also covered. Now, there are a number of different warbands that you can choose from. You have the Cadenorians, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Commoners, who are more quantity over quality, Demonic Host, you've got the Inquisition, where is more quality over quantity. You have Mercenaries. What else have we got? Havarians, I think that's it, yeah. So there's a number of different warband types to choose from. Each has very unique and individual rules and abilities, and they do represent a very different gameplay, game style, a very different feel to playing, whether you're the Inquisition, the demonic host, or just a group of commoners. They do represent a very different feel in terms of which warband you are playing. Now, each of the warbands will have a certain amount of information, and you will also have different types of troops. Now, as well as the book, you will also need to have roster sheets to fill in your warband's details. And these will come with the PDF if you download the soft copy. If you buy the physical copy, I'm pretty sure you can get these on the website, so it's not a big issue. So you'll have the roster sheets, and you will also need to have the hex map with a log to identify what is in each hex. I'm sure that some of you are very talented artists and you can draw and know exactly what is in each hex, but I need to write notes. Now, with your roster sheets filled out with all of your warband members and your hex map ready, it's time to play the game. Right, gameplay. The gameplay is divided into two phases, and you'll be playing a number of campaign turns. So each campaign turn, you will have a battle phase and a management phase. So the battle phase focuses on the actual skirmish battles fought between your warband and the many enemies that you can face in no man's land. The management phase is where you deal with the injuries, the experience, exploration of the land, trading, etc. And this represents the campaign elements of the game in between the battles. In this, it is very similar to games like 5 Leagues from the Borderlands, which has also been featured on this channel. Campaign progression, evolving characters, random enemies. It's here, not quite as detailed as 5 Leagues, but it does bring in a little bit more in terms of interaction with the map. Random locations that you can find during exploration and then traveling and fighting for control. And these locations can actually give your warband certain benefits, certain circumstances in future battles and campaign turns. For example, if you find a farm, you can then fight the current occupants, which you will roll up randomly. And then when you take control, if you take control of that farm, it can actually provide you with extra supplies. And supplies are the currency in this game. Supplies are the things that you use to recruit new members, to pay upkeep, to purchase equipment and weapons. So a farm is actually a very useful location. So what you'll do is you'll explore every campaign turn, you'll note down what you find, and then you will fight for control of those things. Another location is a warehouse, which can increase your stash size. Now, your stash is limited in terms of how many pieces of equipment, how many weapons you can actually store. And your stash also includes your supplies. So keeping your quantity of equipment and supplies within that stash limit is very, very important. And having a warehouse can give you more stash, more space. Also, a very good location to find. This game can give fans of 5 Leagues, Mordheim, another game to have fun with. Now, I do need to address one thing though, and that is the battle area. In your typical skirmish battle game, you have your playing surface, you have your miniatures, pieces of terrain, and the games normally see you measuring movement distance and ranges for your weapons. And you typically play your game on a 3x3 or a 6x4 area. In Warlord Ascendant, however, the game is written to have the battles on a grid, as I mentioned earlier. So you will have gridded battle boards or battle areas. And it's recommended that your battles will take place on a size or an area of A3. So yes, that's 2A4. That's actually about this kind of size. Yeah. So it's 297 by 420 millimeter or 11.7 inch by 16.5 inch, which is a lot smaller than a typical skirmish game, but very similar to the playing areas that role players use to play out encounters in games, such as D&D, Pathfinder, Vampire, etc. And you can get the sort of printed battle boards with all the terrain, again, like the ones that I've been showing you here. Now, you can find these very easily in, this sort of A3-ish size. I think Loke Battle Maps do their books, the big books with the maps inside. These are all very, very useful for this game. Now, in Warlord Ascendant, with that grid, movement and distance is measured by number of squares. So you don't actually need any kind of tape measure or measuring instrument. You can move diagonally, and there is on page 54, if I can quickly find it, 54, there is sort of recommended rules for playing a more traditional non-grid skirmish game with measurement, the measuring tape and everything else. So I mean, there is a little bit here saying how you can make it into a traditional kind of skirmish game, but it is meant to be done on a grid. Now, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it may be a little bit off-putting for tabletop gamers. It may be familiar and encouraging for role players, but we'll see. During the playthrough, you can judge for yourself whether it's the kind of skirmish game that's going to interest you. But, try and keep an open mind in the meantime. Plenty of great games use grids, maybe not so many skirmish games, but we shall see. Right, let's have a quick flick through the book so you can see what you're going to get when you purchase. We have, at the front, we have a page of contents. Pretty decent. There's also an index at the back. The table of contents is fine. I don't know. Reading through the book, maybe the order or the sequence is a little bit different to what I'm used to. But it's okay. You can easily read through. It's very easy to follow. But like I say, in terms of sequence, sort of which section comes first, which section comes second, I found myself having to read forward. When I was going through the book the first time, I was having to go forwards sort of 20, 30 pages to figure something out that was mentioned earlier. But that's a minor thing. You read through the book, you're fine. There is a very short background of the world. More information can be found in the RPG book, especially now that the basic book is available for, pay what you want on drive-through. You can definitely download that and read a bit more in terms of the background and the war. And then, before we go to the rules and the game content, we have the Warband Creation section. And like I mentioned just now, there was a couple of things that I was getting a bit confused with when I first read through the book, and I found myself having to go forwards in the book to the rules and everything to sort of understand what was being presented at the start. And so let's have a look here. So each of the warbands has a lot of different information, who they are, special rules. Each warband type also has their own warband name generator. You've also got unique command actions. Essentially, these are special actions that your leader can use during the game. You will select 3 before the game starts, and every battle you can select different things. But these are like one use abilities during the game. You've then got your troop types that you can select from. Each has its own stat box, a special sort of skill unique to them, plus also weapon proficiencies. Now, one thing that I'm not 100% sure about is, do these characters start with all of these proficiencies, or are these the ones that they are allowed to learn? It's not very clear here. So when I do the playthrough, I think I'm assuming that the recruit knows these proficiencies, the veteran knows these, etc., etc. Now, when you create your warband, you are limited in terms of what you start with, but also in terms of your maximum. It will tell you what your starting warband will have, but it will also tell you what is the maximum number. And some of the warbands are very restricted in terms of how many members of your warband you can have. The troop choice is very limited. You're limited to just 3 types. You've got your leader, you've got veterans, and you've got recruits. There are ways to provide variety within those 3 types. You have maneuvers, feats, proficiencies, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more choice. Scouts, medics, quartermasters, bards, rangers, traders. I think having just a limit of 3 is very restrictive. Saying that, the different warbands do have variety in terms of those 3. What I mean by that is that the veterans for the Cadenorians, I can't say that, but the veterans for this warband are different to the veterans for the commoners, for example. They have different skills, they have different stats. For example, like here, for the commoners, they've got a strength of 1, dex of 1, constitution of 2, spirit of 1. Whereas for the, if I say it enough, I'm going to say it right once, Cadenorians, the veterans have 1, 2, 2, 2 instead of 1, 1, 2, 1. So, I mean, each warband's troops are different from other warbands, but I would just have liked a little bit more choice. Yeah, a little bit more choice. There are no mounts or mounted combat in this, which again may be something that an expansion could bring to the game. Alex did mention to me that flyers and large creatures will be looked at later. At the moment, there are no rules for flyers, even though some of the beasts that you may be fighting, like harpies, obviously fly, and that could give them certain benefits on the battle board. In terms of large creatures, yes, again, there will be some large creatures that you can face up against. Loik, Ettins, 12-foot tall, big creatures. If you're thinking in terms of miniatures, an Ettin has a much larger base than a human figure. So again, in terms of maneuvering them on the battle board, it's not exactly clear at the moment, but Alex did say that he'd be looking into that. You've also got, where is it? Experience and advancement. Your characters, as long as they survive, will improve, gain experience points, and you will also be able to get feat points. You'll be able to improve your stats. You'll be able to get more maneuvers. A lot of things you can actually evolve your character using. And again, very reminiscent of what we have in 5 Leagues. Another little thing that's a little bit different from what I've seen before in other skirmish games are these combat maneuvers. Now, normally in a game, you have a set of maneuvers that you are able to do. We saw this in Broken Shores. As part of the combat, if I can find it, as part of the combat, you do have certain maneuvers that everybody can choose from. So things like charge, disarm, grapple, disengage, etc. Yeah. In Warlord Ascendant, this set of maneuvers is going to be limited and different from warband to warband. What's going to happen is that every member of your warband is bringing a maneuver with them, things that they've learned, things that they know. And all of these maneuvers that are brought to the warband by the members can be used by everybody. So you start the game with typically five warband members. There are some warbands that have different numbers of starting members. But let's say, for example, you're starting with 5 warband members. You will basically be starting with 5 maneuvers. And you can select from this group of maneuvers here. You can select 5 of these, and then everyone in your warband is free to use any of those maneuvers as they play. I like this because, again, this is another way for you to make your warband unique. You can design, customize, really make the warband what you want it to be. Again, the limitations in terms of the troop types that you can take is partly covered with these maneuvers, but like I say, I would like a little bit more choice in terms of troops. But the maneuvers I do like. I really do like that. Right, let's get on to the game rules, how to play. So, ability checks and difficulty target numbers. This is the standard part of role-playing games. It's the standard part of Warlord Ascendant. You will be rolling a d20 and adding your corresponding ability. You are going to be trying to roll equal or above a target number, just like we see in a lot of role-playing games. There is also the advantage and disadvantage mechanic that we have seen in other games like Vampire, Alone in the Darkness, where some situations, some skills, some gear, some weapons will give you an advantage, in which case you'll be rolling 2 d20s and taking the best. There may also be situations where you are under a condition or injured or some other ability which provides you with a disadvantage, in which case you'll be rolling 2d20 but taking the lowest. We have critical failures, we have critical successes. On a 1 on a d20, a natural 1 is a critical failure. And yes, there are, there are, if I can find it, there are fumble tables for critical failures, and there are also critical hit tables for critical hits. Again, like with Broken Shores, it's dependent on the type of weapon, slashing, bomb or spells, bludgeoning, etc. And that is on that natural 20 is the criticals. There will also be times where you have to make opposed checks, again, like we saw in Broken Shores. So there, things like grappling, trying to disengage, things like that will be opposed rolls. So the essence of the game, the core of the game, the ability checks, advantages, disadvantages, opposed trolls, is actually very, very simple and very, very compact. There's not a lot to it. But all the little modifiers, all of the little unique elements to your warband can make this very interesting. Now we come to the management phase where the campaign side of things is covered. So here we will find campaign events, we will find injuries, upkeep, and then you can do things like exploring on the map. Let me grab the map. So during your management phase, you'll be able to send out members of your warband into neighboring hexes to find out what is there. You'll have to roll to see who is currently occupying that hex, if there's something there. Sometimes there won't be anything there. There'll be some kind of little event and you won't have to worry about occupants at all. So over a sequence of campaign turns, you're going to be uncovering more and more of the hex map, hopefully getting more and more area under your control and providing you with more bonuses. And this is all covered here in detail. Like I say, it's not quite as much detail as 5 Leagues, but it is still a good amount of information, a good amount of variety, a good amount of random things happening and going on. But like I say, you don't have quite the detail of 5 leagues, but you do have that element of where the map will interact with what you're trying to do as well. So there's pluses and minuses. Right, the battle section. This was the battle phase. So who are you fighting? How difficult will the battle be? There are rules for adjusting the enemies to reflect your warband's growing strength and growing ability. So the enemies will get tougher as your warband gets better. You'll be rolling for random opponents. This is a solo / co-op game. There are rules here for you to play PvP, but it's very much focused on that solo or co-op style of game. And because of that, you will be rolling up random opponents. Sometimes it's a warband similar to yourself. Sometimes it's beasts. Sometimes it's monsters. There's a lot of variety. Well, I say there's a lot of variety. I kind of wish that we had more of the monsters from the Sacrifice RPG here. But again, maybe they'll be included in an expansion. So with the enemy type and the difficulty, again, there are rules here to modify the enemy so that they are still a challenge. Even after your warband grows and grows and grows and gets better and better, your enemies will still be a challenge. There are rules and information here about how to set up the battle area in terms of placing terrain. Now, sometimes if you're using a battle board similar to what we use in RPGs, you can just use the terrain and what's on here to represent your battle area. Or you can actually place terrain pieces or tokens if you want to as well. There are rules covering that in terms of how many pieces of terrain, what types of terrain. So if you just want to play on a blank grid and add your own terrain, it's perfectly okay. There are rules to do that. But like I say, if you just want to use these pre-generated, pre-drawn grids, also perfectly okay, and you'll be using the terrain that's written or drawn on the grids themselves. Deployment. And then before the battle begins, you have to roll for a battle event. Again, very reminiscent of what we get in 5 Leagues, and definitely something that we use a lot in skirmish gaming. And it adds, again, that little bit of uncertainty, that little bit of interest, uniqueness in the upcoming battle that we're going to play. So the game, in terms of activations, the game again is different to a lot that we see. You are not going to be activating every model every turn. You are going to get typically 3 activations per turn. Sometimes you can get 4, but typically you'll be getting 3 activations per turn. So not every model will be used every turn. So that's where some more tactics come in. You've got to think in terms of which models you need to activate, which models must you activate. There are, like I say, there are some situations where you can get extra activations or orders, but this also applies to the enemies as well. During activation, a model can move and choose one of a number of different actions. For example, they can attack, charge, dash, interact, use a combat maneuver, feat, or other skill. A lot of things that they can actually do during the game itself. Attacks are a simple ability check, with the target number being the target's defense level, normally their armor or their ability to dodge. Roll equal or higher to the defense level, or DL, you hit. For example, one of your warband members has a strength of 2 and is armed with a mace. Now the mace has the defensive and the simple 1 stats. They're attacking an enemy soldier who has half plate, defense level 15, and a light shield, which gives him +1 defense level. So you roll a d20, +2 for your strength, the ability, +1, because having the simple property gives you a +1 to hit. And the target number is 16. Yeah, the armor of 15 plus a shield, which gives a +1. If you roll a total of 16 plus, you hit. If you roll less than 16, you miss. So sad. So it's a very simple system. In terms of damage, again, it's very, very simple. The base damage is D4. That's it, D4. But certain weapons and certain abilities will give you bonus damage. And once a model's vigor, the game's hit points, gets to 0, the model is out of action and removed from the table. So the mechanisms of combat, the mechanisms of dealing damage is very, very simple. And like I mentioned right at the start, is very reminiscent of what role players use. There are, of course, special rules for cover, disengaging, critical hits, fumbles, plenty to keep the combat an interesting affair. Then we have rules for AI, for your enemies, for your opponents, because again, this is a game which is designed with solo or co-op in mind. So there needs to be an AI to control the enemies. And the way that it's done in Warlord Ascendant is similar to one-page rules with decision trees. And also in 5 leagues and 5 parsecs. So for your opponents, you'll be following a series of questions. So for example, for melee, are there any objectives not under our control? Yes or no? Are there any enemies in the way? Yes or no? Are there any enemies in charge range? Yes or no? And it gives you what's going to happen if it's yes or if it's no. Very simple sequence, very easy to follow. We will be putting these to the test just to see how good or how bad they are when we do the playthrough. There are also enemy attitudes which will also affect their decision trees. You've got cautious and aggressive, which can modify the way that they will react. There is also rules for bestial opponents. You've got conditions as well. Conditions such as bleeding, charmed. You've got loyalty and morale. So when things start going pear-shaped, what's going to happen? Are your warband members going to run away? Are they going to stay strong? All the standard skirmish and campaign elements are there. Things that we want to see in a skirmish game. It all seems to be here. There is also on pages 72 and 73 rules about verses and about converting your RPG players, so your RPG characters from sacrifice to bring into this. And then we got the bestiary. We got all the enemies that you can possibly face. And what you'll notice is that with a lot of these, it will state down here quantities relevant to your warband size. So for example, if you come up against the bandit warband, there's the leader here in terms of the brigands or bandits, 1 per member of your warband +1. This is one of the ways in which the game tries to balance with your warband getting bigger and bigger. Earlier on, there are also rules here on page 53, 54 and 55 about how to counter the warband's improving ability. So as your warband starts to increase their statistics, gets better weapons, gets more maneuvers, more skills, well, there are rules in here to make your enemies also get better and have more skills and more abilities. So you get a whole range of different creatures and enemies in here. Like I say, I would have liked more. I always want more. More enemies, more beasts. Yeah, this wasn't bound very well at the bookshop this time, unfortunately. But yeah, it's all here. Loads of beasties and baddies for your warband to face and hopefully overcome. Stats, special rules. Yeah, each of these creatures and each of these warbands are going to have their own special rules. Like I say, a fairly decent selection. But I do hope that more from the RPG will be added later on. What else? Swords for hire. Yes, during the management phase, you can send a member of your warband to try and recruit another member or a new member. And if you're lucky or unlucky, depending on your point of view, you can find swords for hire. And these are special characters that you will have to pay upkeep for, or they'll just leave. And it reminds me very much in terms of the special characters that we used to see in Mordheim, Necromunda, Blood Bowl. You know, these sort of larger than life characters that can really give you a huge advantage in terms of a battle, but they're very likely to leave when you stop paying them, kind of thing. So you've got a selection of these special characters, these swords for hire. Then we've got the loot and gear, weapons and armor, treasure and equipment. Again, not huge tables that we find in a lot of RPGs, but perfectly usable for a skirmish game. And that brings us to the end of the book. And yes, you can find artifacts. So a skirmish game originating from an RPG, bringing over a whole bunch of mechanics and campaign play. A skirmish game with familiar elements to other skirmish games, but still has a few new and different parts that can warrant a look and play. A skirmish RPG to bring role players to tabletop games, or to bring tabletop gamers to role-playing games. It's all good. Play more games. But how will that battle area be received? Playing on a grid A3 size, that may be a sticky point with your typical tabletop skirmish gamer. But like I say, keep an open mind. We want to see how these things actually play during the playthrough. But it's very familiar to role players, and I think it's a good way to get them to start playing skirmish games as well. Now, at 105 pages, it's not a huge book. Well within easy printing from the PDF, if, like me, you need to have a hard copy. In the download, you do get a print-friendly version. This is the print-friendly version. The standard version has like a black border around it. And like I say, you get all the sheets and forms that you need. So, do I recommend? Yes. But I always want to show you guys a playthrough. In terms of the role players, maybe this is a good way for them to take that first step into miniatures and tabletop skirmish gaming or battle gaming. So all that needs to be done now is to create a warband and have a playthrough so we can learn the rules and see the game in action. And that will be in the next video. So guys, that was a very quick overview of Warlord Ascendant from Black Oath Entertainment. A little bit of a different game this time. It's a skirmish game, but very much has the RPG feels. So, in the next video, we will create a warband and we will start our playthrough campaign. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting for you. Again, keep an open mind, positive, negative, keep an open mind. See how the game is played before you make a decision. I have covered some other games using a grid before. I think when we looked at the Rune RPG, I think it was from Gila RPG or Gila Games. That was played using a grid, and that was a lot of fun. So I'm hoping that this will too. This will be a lot of fun as well. We shall see, we shall see. But that, again, in the next video. So, thanks once again for watching. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, ring the bell to be notified when new videos are uploaded. And I will see you in the next video. Take care. Stay safe. Cheers.